So I guess to start this off, would you say this hurricane has been worse than previous years?
Overall, yes. I think the numbers obviously speak for themselves. We've had 30 storms so far this year. What's frightening is the fact that we've had, I think, 10 storms which have rapidly intensified. And again, this is something we were concerned about early in the season. And again, it's been phenomenal what we've seen thus far.
Right. And would you say that it's not really that common for us to see this activity? Would you know why this is happening?
Yeah, there's a number of factors that frankly, a lot of meteorologists, including those at AccuWeather, thought that this season would be a very active season. In fact, I remember discussing this with our colleagues in January and February. AccuWeather makes up a long range forecast during January and February for some of our clients that want to know ahead of time, just how bad the season is going to be. And back then we said there probably would be at least close to 20 storms, this season. And this could potentially be what I referred to as a hyperactive season. We define a hyperactive season when there's the ACE value. Again, ACE determines how long a storm has been out there and what the intensity is. And when you combine those, you come up with what's called an ACE value, accumulated cyclone energy value. And we thought that we would at least be up to 160 or so units. And once you get above 153, historically, we've noticed that means a hyperactive season. So in that in itself, again, it wasn't surprising to us that we've had such an active season. What has been surprising is how many storms have hit the United States. Now, we thought that we would see somewhere around 4 to 7 strikes on the United States this year, but we never dreamed there would be 11.
Right. And on average, how many do we actually see every year?
On average, it's only about 3. And that includes tropical storms and hurricanes. So we're so far above normal as far as impacts on the United States alone.
Right. And I know it's not that common for hurricanes to be intensifying as they make landfall, but over the past few years, we've been seeing that happen more and more. Would you know why that is happening?
Yeah, there's a number of factors, again, that we've looked at this season and other seasons where this is sort of what we've seen over the last several years. Since 2016, we've had above normal seasons. Now, a lot of that is related and mostly related to the sea surface temperatures. Since 1995, we've seen above normal sea surface temperatures for most seasons since then. And part of that is due to a cycle that we see every 20 to 40 years. It's called the AMO, the Atlantic Multidecadal Oscillation, where the currents that are feeding salt water into the Atlantic are feeding, also allowing the water temperatures to warm up. But we also believe that climate change has a lot to do with this as well, because basically the oceans are a heat sink. When you increase the temperature of the atmosphere across the globe, the oceans are one of the first places that absorb that warm water. And of course, we've seen the results of that. We've seen, again, ice, again, melting in the polar regions. We've seen the coral being destroyed because of the warm water. And of course, the rising water levels in the coastal areas. Even Texas, we've seen tides running. When we see high tides, especially what we call king tides, the water levels have been a few inches higher than normal. And each year, it seems like several places are setting water level records. So another factor which has made this season so active is the fact we've gone from a neutral climate pattern, which we call a neutral ENSO, or between an El Nino and La Nina, to a growing La Nina. What that does, when you have a pattern going into a La Nina, that means that the westerly winds, which move across Texas, across Waco area, they tend to stay further to the west and north over the tropics. So like the Gulf of Mexico and the Caribbean, those westerly winds stay further north. So what does that mean? That means there's less vertical wind shear across the Gulf of Mexico and across the Caribbean. And the combination of low shear and the very warm water, those two factors alone have caused, again, an open season for tropical development. It seems like if there's been a system that's gone into the Western Atlantic or the Caribbean or the Gulf of Mexico, they've had an unbridled pattern which has allowed them to develop. And because we've had regions of very warm, deep warm water in parts of the Gulf of Mexico and the Caribbean, we've had explosive intensification, we call rapid intensification. But I almost say it's almost like explosive development, because going, as almost every storm that we've seen over the last few weeks here, a lot of them have gone from being a wimpy tropical storm to a major hurricane. You don't see that happen very many times during a season, let alone about 10 times so far this season.
Right. And would you say that this would carry over into the 2021 hurricane season? Can we expect to see this again next year?
Yeah, well, again, I think one of the things we'll have to look at is see what the state of ENSO will be, the what we call El Nino, the Southern Oscillation, or whether we're going to have an El Nino or La Nina. Right now, the climate models that we look at long term are projecting that we will stay in a La Nina into the early winter, and then we will gradually fade to a more neutral pattern. The question is, will we then go back to a La Nina, or will we actually go into an El Nino? And frankly, I don't trust the climate models as far out to know for sure. So that's something that we'll have to take a hard look at over the next couple of years, but a couple of months or so. But I do want to point out the warm water that we have, irregardless of whether what we call the AMO pattern is still with us next year. Climate change has warmed the oceans, and it's very unlikely that we will see the oceans cooling all that much even next year. So I would not expect there to be another year of 30 plus storms, but I do think next season will be another year in which we will have more storms than normal. Our normal season has 12 storms, and the numbers are going up and up. So we may be looking at 15 to 20 storm years for not only next year, but perhaps the next few years until we see how the overall climate pattern evolves. But boy, what scares me the most right now is the fact that the ocean water temperatures are so warm right now. It's really unbelievable just how much fuel that creates. You get a storm to go over that warm water, and we've seen explosive development. So that's what's very scary. And so I again would advise people living anywhere near the coast or having anything to do with coastal areas that you're going to be facing a higher than normal situation for the foreseeable future, probably, until we see a pattern change here. But we don't see that anytime soon.
Okay, and more short term, because the waters are so warm, would you expect to see more tropical development before the end of hurricane season this year?
Yeah, it's very possible. Now, what's interesting is, what's interesting about Texas is we've seen the westerlies move south and southward and eastward into Texas. We're seeing more robust cold fronts now. And usually around the middle of October, we see that happening. It happened almost right on schedule for the Lone Star State this year. Now what we need to do is get those westerlies to move further to the east and south, deeper into the tropics. And that appears to be happening now with Iota moving inland over Nicaragua and causing life-threatening flooding in Central America. It looks like the westerlies are finally beginning to descend into the tropics. However, what we've learned in La Nina years is oftentimes there's a northward bulge in the westerlies for a few days, maybe like 3 to 6 days. That's enough time to allow tropical development, because as I said earlier, the warm water is not going to go anywhere soon. Now, the water temperatures will cool in the Gulf of Mexico a little bit and probably in the Caribbean. But in the central and southern Caribbean, water temperatures never cool off low enough that won't deter tropical development. So what you look for is whether the upper level wind pattern is favorable for development. And I'm afraid to say it's there. I mean, even though there will be a shutdown in the pattern a little bit, there's still opportunity out there. So until the westerlies become real robust across the tropics, I'm sorry, but as we saw in 2005, we could see development even into December as well. So I'm not letting my guard down anytime soon.
Okay, and what's the likelihood, or how many times have we seen a hurricane or a tropical system development past November?
Yeah, we've seen it a few times. I'd say probably once every few years, maybe once every 5 or 6 years. It happened in 2005, I know for sure. In fact, we had 2 storms develop in 2005, and we actually had one storm develop in late December that actually carried over into January. So, I would not be surprised if we saw 1 or 2 more storms develop, through the period of the rest of November into December this season. Then.
Okay, awesome. I think that's all the questions I had for you for hurricane season. Is there anything else that you want people to know about?
Yeah, there are a couple of things too. Just a point that AccuWeather does have an app. If people like to follow hurricanes, the AccuWeather app has a really cool feature that allows you to look at hurricanes and actually satellite imagery over hurricanes as well. So I know a lot of people are getting interested into hurricanes and so forth. That's a good app, and that app works anywhere in the world, by the way. So if there's a typhoon in the Western Pacific, you can see it on there. And we're going to see development like around Australia and probably in the Indian Ocean. So again, that's another way to view those storms out across those areas. Another thing I want to point out to people, and that is that the climate pattern that we're in right now, and again, because of the warming of the climate, however you want to describe it, again, this is something that we really need to look hard at. It's already happening, so we need to figure out a way to mitigate this. And people should be concerned about this, especially with your insurance or whatever you have to deal with. A couple of studies have just come out. I don't know if you've had a time to see these studies, but they're talking about, again, the fact that more tropical storms and hurricanes spend a lot more time over land as organized tropical systems than what we've seen before. And what that's translated to, as people in Texas have seen, has translated into massive flooding situations. So this is certainly a concern that we have going forward. So I tell people that even if this season does end, which I think it will end as far as not having any impacts on Texas, I think anyone in Texas or anywhere near the Gulf of Mexico need to take a very hard look at how this is going to impact them, not only the next few years, but perhaps for the foreseeable future.